I've had very limited contact with my mother for a year now. It's been super hard not being able to be with her. To get this back it's beyond words.
Hi.
To get to be physically with her, I tear up.
Baby girl.
I'll give you a real hug.
The normal thing is to be able to hug, hold hands. And for a long time, we didn't get to see each other at all.
I have friends who lost a parent and didn't get to see her because of COVID. Didn't get to be with her. And I did worry about that. You know, I'm lucky that my mom's still here. And to get to hug her, better than ice cream, better than pizza, better than chocolate.
That's good.
I'm so grateful I get to see her. I know what a blessing that is, but it feels like I was robbed for a year of time with her. And I'm not going to get that back, but I'm super glad to have what I've got. I feel like a piece of myself has been given back.
You're in here. That's where you are.
I know.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Cookery for day 2 of our holiday fun here. We have some great recipes again for you today. My name is Joe. I'm going to be here showing you around. Chef Sarah we have back with us behind the camera. She'll be with us tomorrow doing all of our baked goodies. As always, we do want to give a big shout out to all of the caregivers in our lives, especially with these last few years. So let's learn some more great treats that we can reward those caregivers with. Today, we are making both a baked brie with some fig jam and walnuts, and we are also making some chicken and bacon gnocchi. I can't wait to get started, so let's go ahead and do it. We're going to start today with our baked brie with fig jam and some walnuts. So our ingredients that we're going to use for that today, we have some puff pastry sheets. Do not make your own puff pastry. It is a whole lot of work, and store-bought is fantastic. We also have some camembert cheese. If you can't find brie, camembert is going to work great. Brie or that, either one is going to be fine for you. We have our fig spread. Any brand of fig spread is going to be fine. If you need to make your own, you can just buy figs, mix it with a little bit of water in a blender or a food processor until it gets to that jammy consistency. And then I have an egg and just about a tablespoon and a half of water just to make an egg wash for me for the top. This one, pretty easy, comes together pretty fast, and it looks so elevated and elegant on any kind of holiday spread. So this is a great one to throw into your bag of tricks. I also just have a sheet pan with a little bit of parchment paper here. So let's go ahead and get started by opening up our puff pastry. If you buy store-bought puff pastry, they're going to have 2 pastries in each bag. You only need to have 1 for our baked brie. So if you want to make 2, if you're having a lot of friends or family over, you'll just want to get 2 wheels of brie for a whole package of puff pastry. But then I'm going through and I'm just unfolding it right on to the bottom of our parchment paper. And that's all she needed with our puff pastry for now. And I'm getting my camembert or brie if you have that, and we'll work with that one. Pull the sticker off the back, and we're kind of going to wrap it up with puff pastry the same way that it's wrapped up with this paper. And then we're going in. This white part you see is the rind of your camembert. Brie is going to have the same kind of rind. For this, some people like to eat the rind, some people don't. Your rind is going to have a little bit stronger of that cheesy flavor. When you're doing any kind of baked brie, it's nice to keep it on there just because it's going to fuse with your puff pastry, keep it all nice and together. So we are going to keep that rind for now. It'll have the same kind of rind even if you buy brie. They'll look the same. Then I'm going to open up my fig jam, and I'm going to put about 1/4 cup or so on top, right on top of my brie, and just spread it out. Perfect. And then while I'm doing this, Sarah, do you want to go grab some honey for us?
Yeah, for sure.
The honey is an additional add-on. So when you're doing strong cheeses like this, you want to add some honey or something as a sweetener. It helps cut that cheesy, strong flavor. It's going to mold really well with that fig. On top of our fig, I have our walnuts. They're going right in the center, right on top. They can be a little mounded. It's fine if they kind of push together off the side. Not a big deal either way. Just get most of that right in the center of our brie like so. And then we're going with just a little bit of honey. We're going to do agave nectar just to be a little more fancy, but anything kind of sweet like that will work. I would avoid doing a real maple syrup here. You could do the fake maple syrups. They're a little bit thicker. The problem you'll find with pure maple syrup is it's pretty thin and it'll want to run everywhere. Now before we start, I'm going to make my egg wash. I'm using the same bowl that I had my walnuts in. That just keeps all our dishes down lower. Then, like I said in day one, we're going to crack our egg with the table, make it easier on us so we have less shells. And then I'm just whisking it up. What water does with your egg washes, you'll notice if you made scrambled eggs before that some of the whites of your egg do not want to break down. They get nice and goopy. The water helps cut that. And it's also going to help us seal our brie. And we're ready to do our sealing. So my first thing I'm doing is I'm pulling the left side all the way up over my brie. I'm going to then take my right side and I'm kind of stretching it. I'm going to pull right over the top here. And I'm going to leave a little overhang. And then take egg wash and I'm just brushing the part of that first side I tucked that is over the top of my brie. And I'm folding the rest over just so they're touching each other. And I'm giving it a nice push down with my fingers. That little push is going to seal those two pieces of puff pastry over each other and keep it all nice and wrapped. And now for the fun part. We are going to take a knife. You can use a pizza cutter. You can use a butter knife. Anything here. It's just to cut some of this puff pastry off. And we're going to cut around in a circle just so there's a little bit of an overhang left. And that is just so we have enough puff pastry to go through and crimp our sides. Have a little more extra, you can cut those parts off. The less puff pastry we have tucked around it, the more we're going to taste the cheese and all those great fillings we have. Then I'm going in and I'm just brushing some egg over the parts that I just cut, again, because I'm going to need to crimp those together. And if I don't have any egg wash, there's not going to be anything to help seal them. And we want to keep all that gooey, delicious cheese right in the center. And so I'm going in, and I'm going to kind of tuck up with the bottom part right over my cheese. And then just like with my top, I am pressing it together just so it stays nice and formed. Rotate, and we'll show you this other side now. I think it's easiest if you pick up this whole wheel of brie, and then you go in, and you crimp it. Make sure you don't push too hard because some of those walnuts will want to poke through your puff pastry, and that'll let some of that cheese out. We just want it all nice and formed up. And now we just need some egg wash over the top so it gets nice and browned. Best tool for this is a pastry brush. A lot of us don't have pastry brushes at home. I don't have a pastry brush at my house. My mom doesn't have a pastry brush at her house. You also can brush with your fingers just the same way. You just want to get plenty on there and brush it all the way around. You don't want to see egg pooling on the top. If it's pooling anywhere, you have too much. It's going to burn just a bit, and you will have that almost cooked egg flaky texture on it when you pull it out. What we're looking for is for this baked brie to look glossy. Egg wash is just kind of strategic burning in a way. It's to give a little bit on there to give some nice brown color on the side of our puff pastry. If we didn't do an egg wash, it would just look kind of pale and white when it came out. Even when it's done, even when your puff pastry is all the way cooked, it's just going to be a little pale and sad. So you want to hit it with some kind of egg wash here. And that's all she wrote for that one. This is ready to bake. It bakes at 350 degrees for 20 to 25 minutes. Now, what's going to affect that different 5 minutes? How much puff pastry we tucked over top of our brie or we crimped on the sides. More puff pastry is going to require it to cook for a little bit longer. So that's one thing just to keep in mind. But we're looking for just that nice golden brown color, and we will keep you posted as we keep checking it. So I'm going to hand that off to Chef Sarah. She is going to go stick it in the oven. I'm going to wash my hands up, and we will get to making our gnocchi. Another quick note on our brie before we get started with our gnocchi is you're going to want to let it sit and cool for just about 10 minutes or so before we slice into it. If we tried to slice into it right out of the oven, that melted brie or camembert or whatever cheese we have is just going to melt out of our cut brie, and it's not going to be as convenient for serving. So we just want to let it sit for about 10 minutes so it can cool and that cheese can set up for us. But now on to our gnocchi. So let's talk about the ingredients we have for that. We have 6 slices of thick cut bacon. You can do any kind of bacon here. You can do the thick hickory smoked, you can do applewood smoked, you can do whatever bacon is on sale at your local grocery store. Anything works here. We're just looking for some of that nice fat that's going to render out, and of course that delicious salty bacon flavor. We have 2 chicken breasts. You can do chicken thighs here. Chicken thighs have more fat. Fat does mean flavor, but they also have a little bit more of those gristly bits in there that some people don't love when you're eating chicken. So we have chicken breasts for today. We also have just some Italian seasoning mix, some grated Parmesan, some heavy cream, and some chicken broth, which is going to be the base of our sauce for our gnocchi. Some fresh spinach, and a little bit of garlic here to mince up. And of course, our potato gnocchi. Now, gnocchi is potato pasta if you guys aren't familiar with it, and you can make them from scratch. Traditional gnocchi only has 3 ingredients: potato, eggs, salt, and that is it for your gnocchi. Now, there is no shame in buying store-bought gnocchi. I tried to make gnocchi for a catering event once for 50 people, all from scratch. And let me tell you, just buy your gnocchi from the store. No shame. It tastes delicious. So much easier on you. So there is that. It's sold just by the pound, and we'll need 1 pound for today. And those are our ingredients, so let's start cooking. First thing, we want to start building some flavor in our cast iron skillet here. We also need bacon fat to cook with it anyway, so I'm going to start with my bacon. Get that rendered off and get those layers of flavor built in my pan. I'm going to cut it first. You can cook it and then crumble it. It just gives you an extra step though. So I'm just taking my knife and cutting it into little pieces. If you have kitchen scissors, scissors work really well here too if you have some heavy duty ones. Like I said too, if you don't like cutting raw meat, you can cook it first and cut it afterwards. Bacon's pretty fatty, so you got to give a good little touch with your knife. And it's going right in the pan. Now we're looking to render some of the fat off before I crisp my bacon up, so I'm not as concerned about my pan being nice and ripping hot, but I do have it on the medium-high heat, and you'll start to hear it sizzle as that fat works out. And then I have a wooden spoon to stir it around with, and I have a spoon with some slots in it. That is going to make it a lot easier for us at the end when we need to get our bacon bits out of there, but keep that fat to keep cooking with. So a slotted spoon, anything like that is going to work for you. While our bacon is cooking, we're going to go ahead and cook with our raw meat here, with the chicken, and get that cleaned up. You'll see that chicken is going to have a little lobe of fatty piece right up here. That section is right where the chicken wing attaches to the breast, so we want to clean up some of that connective tissue before we keep working. I'm cleaning that off. Here's another little bit. Whenever I go to a restaurant and I order chicken, whether it's any kind of chicken, and I take my second or third bite and I bite right into a tendon or right into a bone or some unrendered fat, that just puts me off for the rest of the meal and I don't want chicken anymore. So whenever I make chicken, I always like to go through, feel around, and make sure I'm really cutting all that connective tissue off that could get into somebody's food when they're trying to chew it up. Once it's all nice and cleaned, I'll set that to the side and I'll start on my other one. Chicken breasts are going to have the same connective tissues on all the ones you clean. So after you've done a few, you'll have a feel for where you got to cut and get it all nice and cleaned up. I don't know how well the sound transfers, but you can hear our bacon is starting to render off here, getting some nice crisp. So I'm just stirring it around, breaking it up so it's nice even pieces. And then I'm just going to let it sit. Let it crisp a little bit, let a lot of that fat start to render off. And I'm going to cube up these pieces of chicken. Now, depending on your personal preference, you can cut the chicken any size you want to. But whatever size you choose, you do want to cut them the same dimensions because we want them all to cook at the same time. You don't want to have a piece of chicken that's perfectly cooked, some that's raw, some that's way overcooked. So we're just looking for nice, consistent pieces. For today, we're going to go just about an inch or so, maybe a little bit less. Essentially, we're just looking for a nice bite-sized piece of chicken. And then go through and cut them into cubes. Cutting them before we cook them does a couple things with our chicken. One, it's less work for us after. If we cooked our full chicken breast and then had to cut it up, we would take some time having to let the chicken rest. Then it would have to go back in our pot. This way, once we cook our chicken, our recipe is just ready to go, and we'll keep adding stuff to our pot. The other thing is we're increasing the surface area of our chicken with every cut we make. There is a lot more sides of this diced up chicken breast that I can sear, get that nice caramelization of flavor on, than I could with just the front and back of this piece of chicken. So that's going to help us out too. Then we're going right back into our bowl here. And same thing with my other chicken breast. Cut it into strips, just about an inch thick or so, maybe just a bit less. And then I'm going through and cutting it into bite-sized chunks. Now to tell when our chicken's done, chicken needs to be cooked to a safe temp of 165 degrees. And we like to have meat thermometers here. It is going to give you that nice tried and true reading. Know for sure instantly what temperature your chicken's at. If you don't have one of these, let them cook until you think they're done. Find the biggest piece of chicken that you have in your pan, take it out and cut it in half. You don't want to see any bits of pink in the center at all. It needs to be all the way cooked through, all look nice and white and starting to want to shred for you. Here we go with our bacon, getting some nice caramelization in there now. A lot of fat rendering. Nice. All right, our chicken is crunched up, got it into cubes, and then I'm going to want to season it a bit. So I'm going to get my hands washed up here from the raw chicken. And I'm going to do just some salt and pepper in there. And I'm going to season up the rest of our meal, rest of our gnocchi when we get there and cooking it. But I like to have just some bit on the outside of my chicken so I can get that sear set and it has a nice crust on there. So I'm going to do just a few sprinkles of salt. And a few sprinkles of pepper. And then I'm just getting in there and tossing it all together. Make sure it's just nice and coated. I didn't go too crazy with my seasonings here. I'm going to season up my dish when we get it all made and the sauce is in there. This is just to give something to set onto it. Get some nice fond building on the bottom of the pan. Those are the stuck-on brown bits. As you're cooking your chicken or even bacon, you're going to notice that layer that's getting stuck onto the bottom of your cast iron. We want those bits, that fond. Those are going to release when we add in our stock and our cream, and that's going to be what gets us all that great flavor in there. I didn't go too crazy with my salt on my chicken either because the bacon is pretty salty. That bacon is going to add some salt in my dish, and depending on the bacon I bought, it could be saltier than others. So that's why the majority of the salt we add into dishes, we do at the end when we can taste it and we salt to taste. You'll see a lot of recipes say salt to taste and they're having you add it at the end. That's because as you make a sauce, it starts to reduce, the liquid evaporates off. All that's left in the pot is condensing down, so your salt flavor gets more and more intense as more of that liquid evaporates off. Of course, anytime you touch raw chicken, give your hands a quick wash. And then I'll set my chicken to the side. And now we have to mince garlic. And now we'll talk about a little bit of cross-contamination. Every time you're cooking with chicken, that's a good note. I would not, on this cutting board that I just cut chicken on, want to prep anything that I'm going to eat raw. I wouldn't want to cut greens for a salad, cut veggies for a veggie tray. I also wouldn't want to cut anything that I'm not going to cook as high of a temperature as I'm going to cook the chicken. So if I was going to do chicken and I also was cooking some steaks, I wouldn't want to cut my steak on this board because then I have to cook that steak to 165 degrees. What I am going to cut on there right now, though, is our garlic. My garlic is going in that same pot with my chicken. It's cooking down with my sauce, and it is going to reach at least 165 degrees. So I know that I'm fine to cut my garlic on this raw chicken plate. Now, if I was using this garlic, though, to make a salad dressing afterwards, I would need to get a new board, get a new knife. That way that garlic that is having raw chicken on it isn't going into something that you're going to eat raw. But for now, we can just mince this up on our board and get it ready to go in with our chicken. Again, just like we talked about in days past, we are keeping our tip nice and down, working the heel of our knife back and forth through our garlic until it gets nice and minced. While we're mincing there, we'll give our bacon another stir. It is getting really close. And then, sir, if you want to get a close-up, at this stage, your bacon's cooked. Your bacon's to temperature, your bacon's safe to eat, but I like my bacon crispy. So I'm going to let it cook down in here just a little bit more. For a couple reasons. One, like I said, I don't love the flabby bacon, but it's also going to soften a bit in our sauce as it cooks in the liquid. So we want to get that nice crispness there, and it won't be quite as crispy when we go in our sauce. Give that another few seconds while I finish my garlic. What else I love about this recipe is it's a one-pot meal. You're going to start with this pot, you're going to end with this pot. It's just throwing stuff in it and removing it for a little bit as we're waiting. That, whenever you cook for holidays, you have a lot of dishes. If you've had the parties at your house, you are not a stranger to that. You know what goes into it. So if a couple of the meals you're preparing, if you don't have to do an extra dish for it, it could really save you a lot of time in the long run. So now I'm going, I just have a bowl here. I have my slotted spoon, and I am taking out my bacon. I'm saving my bacon grease. There we are. And we want to leave just about a tablespoon or so of grease in this guy. We have just a touch more than that or so right now. So I poured a little bit out just into that pan that had my bacon. That sizzle you heard was the bacon fat that was sitting in there start to cook. And now I'm going to take my chicken into my pan that's already hot and get her in there searing. And I'm going to spread it out so that every piece of chicken can start to get that sear set on it. And then I'll crank my heat back up to medium high. I turned my heat down lower when I was taking my bacon out, because as you take stuff out of a pan, if you still have your heat really high, it gets more and more likely that it's going to burn the bottom. But as soon as I added more chicken into there, I was safe to go ahead and crank my heat back up because I had something in the pan for it to keep cooking. While that's cooking, let's go ahead and talk about how we're going to work through the rest of this recipe. It's good to see the forest through the trees when we have a lot of steps in here, so we know where we're going, we know what we're doing when. So I'm going to let this chicken cook in here until it gets a nice hard sear set on the bottom, and then I'm going to add in my garlic to it. That's going to flavor not only the oil, but start flavoring my chicken. Now, the reason I don't add my garlic in here earlier than as soon as my chicken's done is because garlic is going to burn really fast. We just want to give it in there enough time for my garlic to start getting fragrant, and then we're going to add in our liquid ingredients to stop that garlic from burning. We're also going to add in our spinach at that same time that we're doing our garlic. For the same reason, spinach is going to cook really fast. We're just looking for it to start wilting a little bit, and then we want to get that liquid in there to stop it from cooking down too much. Like I said, our two liquids we're using, heavy cream and some chicken broth. Chicken broth is going to add some great chickeny flavor that we're still trying to build in here with our chicken. Cream is going to give it that nice, thick, creamy, fatty consistency we want in a pasta sauce. It also is going to help thicken and bind it up. That high fat content in our heavy cream is going to help that sauce consistency at the end. We're starting to get a little crust set, but I want it a little bit darker, so I'm going to leave the rest of those pieces sitting there and waiting. But that chicken is going nice and quick. And I have the rest of my stuff on standby. Now, after we add in our liquid ingredients, I'm going to add in my gnocchi. The gnocchi that is going in, it needs to cook a bit. It is a fully cooked product. Usually you'll have people, you'll see boil your gnocchi, then spoon them out. If you boil them first, it gets them a little starchy, more likely to stick on our pan and stick together. It is going to have plenty of cooking time just with the sauce we're making, or we don't have to worry about boiling it all ahead of time. Again, it saves us a dish and speeds us up a little bit. So now I'm going in and I'm giving my chicken a stir. And you don't have to be painstaking about it and flip all of them so it's every side getting perfectly seared. But we do, for the most part, want to try and get those sides of the chicken down, just so we get another side seared, so it can cook all the way through evenly. And you can see in here, I don't know if it translates on our camera, but you can see those brown bits from the bacon acting as one of those seasonings on the outside of the chicken and starting to get stuck on there with it. That's exactly what you want. You can also tell some of that pink is getting white around the edges as our chicken starts to cook. That's a good sign here. We're getting nice and close. What is our timer on our brie at, Tara?
It looks like it's at 4 minutes and 10 seconds.
Perfect. In just about 4 minutes, we'll check our brie out and get there. But let's talk about some stuff that we can do here if we don't want to use chicken. You don't have to have meat in here at all. If you don't want any bacon, if you don't want any chicken, you can work this recipe the same way through. I would add in some onions. I would probably add in some other kind of veggies, some bell peppers, amp your garlic up. And then you're going to, instead of doing chicken and bacon first, do some olive oil. And you'll want to sear your onions and your peppers and get your fond from your veggies like that. Then you can still add in your garlic. You can still add in your spinach. I would then amp up some more spinach and work the rest of the recipe all the way through. And you just have a veggie gnocchi cream. You can do roasted red peppers. We do a sauce that's pretty similar to it for goat cheese ravioli, where it's a cream-based sauce with spinach and a bunch of roasted red bell peppers. But you can still, like I said, work through this recipe the same way and add in your roasted bell pepper strips at the very end, and it's going to work out fine for you. And now I'm going to go through and I'll see what my chicken is at. With bits of chicken like this, kind of like how we talked about the crab cake, how we rotated our pan around, the same heat might not be in every part of this pan. So I'm going to check a few pieces of chicken, and I'm going to check the biggest ones that I can see. With the meat thermometer, it's the flat part that's reading, not the very tip and not the end of it when it starts to get fatter, but that one consistent flat part there. And I'm going in and trying to get that part of the thermometer as close to the center of my chicken as I can. And I'm paying attention and seeing how close all the temperatures are to each other. And I'm checking just a few of them. So all the pieces of chicken are just about, they're between 125 and 135 degrees. So I know that I need to go a little bit longer with the chicken here so that it's nice and safe to eat. When you're cooking a chicken breast in an oven, you're temping it out. While meat rests, it's going to rise a few degrees. With chicken, I only trust it rising a couple. So if you're temping it and it's 162, you can take your piece of chicken breast out. It'll rise those last degrees to 135 when you slice it. Similarly, with our chunks of chicken here, the chicken is going to cook more after we add in our sauce and our gnocchi to it. So if it's temping out at just about 160 or so, I am comfortable knowing that it's going to raise another 5 degrees when we're cooking it with the sauce, with the spinach. We just don't want to go too far down so it's still raw when we get it all finished with our sauce the way we want. So we're going to give that another couple minutes. Then I'm going to use my meat thermometer, check it again just to be sure. But you can already see that great color. We got up on the bottom of the pan with our bacon, and we are getting ready to start building the rest of our gnocchi. They also will have different seasoned kinds of gnocchi. This is just a traditional gnocchi. They also have cheese-infused ones. They'll have some herb gnocchi that you have. There's tons of flavors. All these I know have them. Kroger will have them for you. One more stir for our chicken, and I'll get in there and temp it again. The last few degrees of your chicken is going to go a whole lot faster. Room temperature up to this 120 mark or so took us a little while. That last 40 degrees, though, will go pretty snappy. Yeah, that one's good to go. That one's ready. And I'm checking my 3 biggest, and they're all up to temp, so I'm comfortable with going ahead and adding in my garlic. So my garlic is going in the pan. Before I add the garlic, I'm turning my heat down from medium-high to right at medium, so my garlic won't burn for me. Tossing that in. I also have my baby spinach that's going to go in with it here. And we're going to stir that around. Hey guys, Joe back at you with the Cookery. Had some great technical difficulties there, so we're here with a different camera angle. Hopefully our picture's a lot better for you. So let's talk about what we were doing, just in case we missed a little bit of it there. brie wrapped in puff pastry is just about to come out of the oven, and I'll show you guys that. And here we're working on our bacon and chicken gnocchi. So we seared our bacon first. We cut it into little bits, cooked it down until it was nice and rendered. We removed that from our pan, and we had some nice crispy bacon bits just like this. And I left a little bit about that bacon fat in there. I used that bacon fat. I cooked off our chicken that we cut into little chunks, seasoned with some salt and pepper, made sure those were nice and cooked. We used a meat thermometer to check it. Then we went through, we added our garlic. We added in some spinach until it got nice and cooked down. Then we went through, added our cream, and added our gnocchi, and this is what we are left with here in our cast iron cooking down. So again here, we stopped right after we added that liquid to it, and now we're going to add back in our bacon, all of it, plus a little bit of help just to garnish the top of our dish, and then about a half cup of Parmesan cheese. And this is both for some salty, good Parmesan cheesy flavor. It's also, though, to thicken up that sauce. As the cheese starts to melt down for us, it's going to really thicken up and get creamy. That was a little less than a half cup, so I'll hit it more. And we're going to stir that all together. That timer that is going off, you guys can hear it, that is our baked brie. Sarah's going to grab that out of the oven and come show us. And then we're going to plate up and try all this. Before you plate up your gnocchi, grab yourself a fork. We want to try it. See if it needs some more salt. See if it needs any pepper. Maybe a little more of the Italian seasoning.
Alright, and I have a baked brie here. Super delicious. We're going to leave that off to the side for a few minutes so it can set up before we cut it.
That gnocchi is perfect. Doesn't need salt. Doesn't need pepper. That Parmesan really comes through. But what I taste more than anything are those layers of bacon flavor that we really worked for from the beginning. That's why we did our bacon first. That's why we wanted that really nice fond from our bacon bits that stuck to the bottom. And then let me add that. And here's our great baked brie. I'm set down right to our side. And let's get plated up so we can sample all this delicious stuff. I know the gnocchi tastes good, but I didn't try it all together yet, so I still need to take a bite. We have a nice, beautiful serving platter here. Take our cast iron and all right down. Right over the top. Make sure you get all that sauce. Smooth it out. And we'll hit it with a little bit of Parmesan over the top. That's the empty one. That doesn't do it. And we'll garnish the very top of it with our bacon. Garnishing with herbs is totally fine, but I mean, when in doubt, if I can garnish something with bacon, I am going to pick bacon every single time. Get this board out of my way, and we can cut into our brie and let you guys see what we're working with here. Now, this is still a little hot. I'm going to cut into it, though, because I want you guys to see what that deliciousness we have in the middle is. Go get ourselves a bread knife. Bread knives for this are great because they have a serrated edge. What I do if I have a chef's knife and I press down, I'm going to smush my cheese instead of having it still be a nice, pretty cut. The bread knife with your serrated teeth lets you saw motion, and it just slices through it without smushing your bread and your cheese out. Since I'm cutting this a little bit before it rested for that full 10 minutes, it is going to have some cheese melts out, but that makes it for an even more fun picture here when I spread it. I'm cutting through gently. All right, you guys ready for this? 1, 2, 3. And there's our baked brie. So now that it's melting out, we can slice it and we'll scoop up some of our brie. If you let it cool for a little bit, it'll slice a little cleaner. But this way it lets you see all of that jam, all the walnuts that we had in the center there. And I'm going to take it and hit just a drizzle of our honey over. there she is, folks. There's our meal for day 2. So we showed you how to make a baked brie. We use Cayman bar. You can use any of that cheese you wanted to. And then we made this delicious that I'm probably going to eat all of it. Sorry to everybody else here. Bacon and chicken gnocchi. The smells in here are unreal, as I'm sure all of you are going to figure out when you make it for yourself. As always, we just wanted to say happy holidays out there to everybody. A big thank you to all of our caregivers. We cannot wait to see you for day 3 and all of our baked goodies. Thank you, guys.